This is the President McCormack Podcast with your host, Mark McCormack.
Today on the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, Walter Noot. Thanks for coming on, my friend.
You're welcome.
Hey, I was thinking on the way down here, do you remember the first time we actually met?
I do. I think I do. We were probably playing basketball.
Yeah, we were playing basketball at the Stake Center.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to go up there. How long ago was that? It's like years ago, right? 15 years ago?
I think it's closer to 20 years ago. It was a long time ago. Maybe you're so young that that makes a big difference, 5 years, but it was a long time ago.
Well, we've been playing up at that Stake Center since I was probably 14. So with a 2-year gap for the mission, but yeah, I remember you. Yeah, it was funny because I remember you coming and playing with us, and you came regularly for a while.
I did until the frenzy years were a little aggressive, and so I just like, man,
Yeah.
the thing is though, I actually do think I stayed playing there for a while. So that's yes,
Yeah,
I played there. I ended up getting a different group of guys I played with at a different place. I don't know why, just kind of you rotate around. For me, I never stayed real loyal to anything. And so that's kind of my whole life story maybe, but never stayed real loyal to all that stuff. And I just I'd find a group and I'd play with those guys for a while. And then I'd be like, yeah, I'm getting tired of this and I'm going to go do something else. And
all my friends that played up there, when I say friends, it's a pretty loose term now, but it's, I haven't seen most of those dudes in a long time. A couple of them got into drugs and then,
good times. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but we did, didn't we have like, we had a couple of young kids that played with us, ended up playing at BYU a few times. Nick Emery. Did Nick Emery come and play?
He'd come play, yeah.
Yeah, and his older brother, is it Jackson Emery?
Jackson.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think it was Jackson. I remember, because he was like 15 or 16 the first time he kind of played with us. And I was
just
like,
a little scrub.
Yeah, man, this
the
dude's
kid coming in,
good.
it's like, oh, he's pretty decent. He's pretty good for a kid.
Then they go on to be like, I think he went to the NBA, didn't he? I think he did. I think he played like
either that or he played. It seems like that or Europe or something.
Yeah,
but
something.
Yeah. Yeah, they were both really good. I mean, they ended up, I think the trick is those two guys they just would sit out in their yard because they lived not too far from me.
Yeah.
You could see them out there playing all day long.
Just all the time.
Just shooting all day long, just practicing.
Yeah.
Being really consistent. It was really good.
No, that's way cool. I haven't even told you this yet, but have you heard of Tandem Ventures yet?
I'm not sure.
So Tandem is a venture capitalist firm that's owned by the two managing partners are Alex Bean from Divvy and then McKay Dunn.
Yeah.
And so Jimmer Fredette and I are actually venture partners in there. So we raise money for them. And so it's kind of funny. My reason to tell you that is it's kind of funny being around Jimmer, right? So one of the events they did was over in Highland at Alex's house, and they did this like shoot with Jimmer night, right? I'm telling you, dude, that dude doesn't miss. Like, does not miss. He started like under the hoop and went all the way back to the other the other free throw line in a full court. I bet he missed 2 shots the whole time.
I just never could figure out why that guy, I think it was the Suns. I think he went to the Suns. I'm trying to remember what team he played for, and he finally came back to the NBA again.
So he started in the Kings.
Yeah, he started started with the Kings, and that was a flop. But it's always kind of a flop when you're a freshman and when you're a brand new guy. You just kind of come in the NBA, and there's very few guys that really make it that way anyway.
Yeah,
I'm really close with Mike Smith. Do you know Mike? He played for the Celtics. He does the jazz stuff.
Oh, okay.
And so he and I had lunch yesterday, but he was in the NBA I think at 10 years, but he was behind Larry Bird, and I think he was personally behind McHale. Like he had to step in for McHale.
Right.
And so he was like, dude, I never got any playing time.
Yeah.
Because he's this 6'10" shooter, like this really great shooter, All-American, amazing player. But he was like, it was just tough going to the NBA. There's just such a big step to go from college ball where you're the man. Like he was one of the best players in the country, and then he gets drafted in the NBA, and then he ends up behind freaking Kevin McHale. Like, you're screwed.
I know you're almost like, do I learn from him or do I got to sit behind him for years and years? And
yeah,
it's wild. In fact, even Mark Madsen, obviously, right?
Yeah,
Mad Dog. So when he was at UVU, I got to meet him, got to know him pretty well. And you hear about him and it's like, yeah, he backed up Shaq, right? And he's a 2-time NBA champion, but when you really look at him, you wouldn't say like, oh, he's got this insane career, right? But then when you play ball against him, holy crap! Like I want to say he's got to be 6'11" or 6'10", something like that.
He just hurt you.
He's massive.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm a big guy, and I cannot. I mean, he makes me feel like I'm a 6'1" guard, just massive man.
Yeah, that's the difference. I mean, I'm 6'3" or something, and I'm a little squirt compared to you, and then you get the next level. And I just remember when I was at BYU, every once in a while there'd be somebody who would come in. It seems like somebody elbowed me in the face really bad. And I don't remember who it was, Kite or what. It was one of these dudes that was like, it was an NBA player. I don't remember who it was, but he shows up in the summer at BYU, and I'm like, cool, I get to play with this NBA guy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I'm 6'3", right? So I'm really tall. Yeah. And so I'm down inside because I'm like really tall. And now there's a real man in there.
Yeah.
And he turns around and he's like, I think he rebounds the ball, and I don't think I even know where the ball was because it was so up so high.
Yeah.
And he just kind of grabs it. I'm next to this tree, and the tree grabs the ball and then does this thing with its arms, and then goes right in my face and just rips my whole mouth apart, and I'm just bleeding everywhere. And he just kind of looks at me and goes, "Oh, sorry, man." And I was like, "Yeah,
your face got in the way.
No problem."
Yeah, yeah. They're NBA players are different, man. They're built different. Because what you're saying too, I mean, a lot of them don't make it, and they are the best player on their team.
Yeah,
on their college team. And some of these guys, they're like on Duke, and they still don't. Like, still kind of wash out. Like Tyler Hansborough, right? Like, okay, career, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, you ought to interview Mike. He's a cool guy, but that's what he was saying to me the other day. We were a couple of days ago. We were sitting in the car and we're just going somewhere, and he was just like, "Man," he goes, "The difference between college ball and NBA was just it's like you can't describe it." He goes, "Before you were the best guy." He's like, "You go in the NBA, everybody's the best guy."
Yeah. That's
all of them were the best guy.
Yeah.
So you're kind of, you got it really, I mean, it's this next level, and you can see it every time somebody comes in the NBA. It doesn't matter, almost doesn't matter who they are. There's some exceptions, but very, very few exceptions where they come in and they excel at the beginning. They have a really tough time.
Well, even look at Zion Williamson, right? Like he just cannot get through a season.
Can't get through a season without hurting himself, hurting a toenail or something. I don't know what that guy does to himself.
Exactly. Well, I'll tell you what it is. He's overweight.
Yeah.
I mean, what do they play? 30 games in college? About 30 games.
Yeah, and then you go to
and if you go to the tournament
seasons in the regular season, and then you go, if you make it to the playoffs, then you're really toast.
Yeah.
And then you got a lot of practice in between. It's not, and they're working you too. They're not just asking you to just
show up.
Yeah, do a few sit-ups or something. It's going to be, you got to go work out because they want you to be in shape because you got to run.
Yeah. Even Charles Barkley reached out to him recently, was like, wants to help him and kind of put his arm around him because Charles had to lose some weight in his career. And
he was a big boy.
They'll destroy you. I mean, remember Glenn Big Baby Davis?
Yeah.
Called him Little Shaq or whatever. He could have been a lot better.
How long did that guy last the NBA though? He didn't last real long because I think he was pretty heavy.
I think he had a quick peak because he was on that Celtic team, but 8 years maybe.
Yeah, that Celtic team. I hated that team.
Someone will text me later and be like, it was 14. It's like, okay. He's still in the league. Like, oh, my bad. I'll tell you one thing. So, I've been doing these NBA courts, right? In this other company.
Yeah, that's right.
Dude, every time, so it's funny. So when you go to these teams to like meet with them and like see the floor and like there's no one there, right? It's all the operations guys. But everyone likes the floors because they're kind of sexy and fun, right? Because, the new little shiny thing. So like a lot of the executives will come down, and come and check it out. And every person inside their team knows their team intimately, right? Their basketball team. And it's hard for me, right? Because I'll go to the Kings. The Kings are a good client of ours. And I'm like, hell, I don't even know if I can, if anyone's listening to this, I can't even name your starting five sometimes. You know what I mean? So I've started to, every time before I go to a meeting, like if I'm flying in, I'll just sit on the plane and I'll read about every freaking player and see what's going on and like really dive in so that I can actually talk to these guys. Because if you don't know, they're offended.
Yeah, well, they should be.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
The funny thing is like it's like the Kings. You know, they're here in the West, and you think you'd know them, but really this year it was until the playoffs. That's when I finally was like, wow.
Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, I mean, I remember Sabonis' dad. You know, he was like this amazing passer, and you could watch him. I mean, I think he had bad feet or something like that. There was something with that guy where he couldn't last very long, but he was really, really good. And then his son is kind of skinny, you know, so you think, oh, this guy's not like his dad. Yeah. But he's decent, and their teams, I've loved watching them. I wanted them to go all the way. Yeah. I actually love watching the Heat go.
Oh, do you? There you go.
I just like it just because they're underdogs. I love underdogs. They're cool.
Jimmy Butler, you know what's funny about Jimmy Butler? I love the Michael Jordan's son conspiracy theory with him. Have you ever heard that?
Oh, he totally looks like him. Yeah.
Oh, he freaking looks like him, plays like. I mean, dude, like it's one of those things that the more YouTube you watch on it, the more convinced you are that he, you know, something happened where they're both like.
Yeah, there's some other conspiracy theories out there like that I probably shouldn't mention.
Right. Well, another funny thing too is it's like Michael's other kids weren't that good at ball. None of them. You know, like I think the one kid went to college, but I mean, he didn't even sniff the NBA. Michael Jordan Jr. or something like that, or
you think they would, you know? Sometimes you do see it. You do see that that hereditarily. Yeah. You can see kids coming in, and they're a bunch of them. Look at Kenyon Martin's kid. Yeah. Kenyon Martin was a bruiser, and his kid is actually pretty finesse. I really like watching him play.
Okay, where's he at?
He's the Miami guy. I think that's Kenyon Martin's son.
Oh, is it? Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah.
Is he young?
Yeah, he's young.
Like really young, right?
He's pretty young. He's like, I don't think maybe he's a rookie. I don't know, but man, I love watching him play. He reminds me of, I'm trying to remember what player he reminds me of, but you watch him, he reminds you of some of the old school players, just the way he runs up and down the court and the way he shoots, and his defense, he plays really strong, and it's like, wow. I mean, this series is kind of not that great, but the last series, it was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I have to admit, I've only watched 3 full basketball games this year.
I hated the NBA like for 2 years when they were going.
Oh, you protesting them for a minute?
They're so stupid. I just got sick of it, and it's kind of funny because I've got a friend who played in the NFL, Burgess Owens. He's Burgess. He's a congressman now, and he's boycotted the NFL and the NBA. Completely boycotted him. And he used to. I mean, he played. The guy's got a ring and everything, and so it's like, dude. So he invited me to come to some BYU thing down at the stadium down in Vegas, and I want to go to that. And I said, well, dude, come with me, and let's go to a Jazz game. And he's like, I don't go to NBA games. It's like, all right, whatever.
All right, let's go to dinner then. That's funny. So is he still that way?
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's still. Dang. He says he's going to boycott the NFL until Roger Goodell's out.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So they have to outlive each other. Burgess is kind of old too, so I don't know. Yeah. He's like 71 or something. I don't know what he is.
Oh, is he that old?
Yeah, he's something like that.
Yeah,
he's pretty in shape.
Goodell, I was going to say he looks pretty healthy.
Oh, yeah, he's super healthy.
Goodell's going to be there for a while. I don't know how they're going to get him out of there. He's not that old, right? Isn't he like early 50s?
Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah. I don't even know the rise of Roger Goodell.
I don't either.
I feel like he's been the commissioner forever.
He has.
And a lot of people, I know the owners love him, but a lot of the players hate him.
You kind of watch this like the NBA, what's his name? Silver, the guy that's
Adam
Silver. I think it's like any other business. You know, somebody gets a job in the business and they kind of grow up in their careers and they kind of work into that position. They just end up being the right guy. And I'm sure that's how both of them ended up there one way or another.
Yeah.
But it does change the personality of it's like any organization, changes the personality of the organization depending on, even though they've kind of grown up that way, they still have their own personality, and it does drive the organization's personality. For
sure. I mean, David Stern, he seemed to be a guy that was pretty beloved, right?
Yeah, he was.
Talking NBA.
Yeah.
I was young, so I don't really have too many opinions on him other than like, I just remember he was like always kind of like the leader out in front, very vocal. He helped grow it globally really well. That was his big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't have a super strong opinion either way about Adam Silver. That whole thing when they kind of went political, I don't care one way or another. If you know, I don't care. I don't even give a rat's what they believe, any of those guys. But when you start pushing on everybody at a certain point, it's like, okay, you know what? I was just watching basketball. That's all I wanted to do.
Well, I'll tell you where it started. It started getting ruined on the talk shows, like ESPN. You know, like I used to wake up, you know, I used to travel a lot for business, and everywhere I woke up, you know, I'd turn on First Take, and I'd just listen to First Take. Because, you know, they're debating this player, that player, this guy, you know, and it was always interesting. And then, man, it was just like more political and more political and more political. And I was like, dude, I can't watch this shit anymore. I don't know. I get sick of it. I've been watching an ESPN show in,
do you know
8 years.
Do you know Ennis Cantor? Do you know who that is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ennis Freedom or whatever his name is?
Yeah, Freedom.
Yeah.
His name is I think his name is
Freedom Cantor?
I think his name is Freedom. Yeah. His new name is Freedom.
Yeah.
So I met with him. He was here in Salt Lake not that long ago, like about, let me think. It was probably a month ago. So sometime in May.
Yeah.
And it was actually Burgess that asked me to come to that thing. And he spoke about the NBA and kind of the whole bubble thing and how there was this, if you ask his opinion, at least, you know, this is his opinion. His opinion is that all the other players were kind of like, look, I really don't care one way or another about all this, but they're asking us to wear this. I don't really care. They're just trying to make more money. This is the NBA trying to make more money. And so whatever. And so you want me to wear that on the back of my shirt? Who cares? You know, whatever they were doing, put it on the court, you know, who cares? And he said that most of the players in the NBA that he knew that he was interacting with were just kind of very indifferent, didn't really care, knew that it was a business, knew that the NBA was just trying to capitalize on something rather than really setting a statement. They just wanted to capitalize on the opportunity.
Well, it's a pretty big black eye. I mean, honestly, they pumped that Black Lives Matter organization like mad.
They did. So did a lot of others, though.
Oh, the NFL, I heard at one point, like pledged like $100 million to them or something.
Yeah.
But, you know, as we've just kept living, you know, Black Lives Matter organization has blown every dollar they ever spent on vacations and private jets and homes. And it's like, it's ridiculous. It's unbelievable.
Party, yeah.
And supporting the Democratic Party.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just political stuff. And that's, I think this is just anything where one way or another, and I'm, you know, all of it sickens me somewhat. But in any case, you kind of see that in businesses. Businesses are doing a lot of that, trying to placate one audience or another. And I guess there's some value in it. I'm assuming there is. If they're doing it, they have to, unless they really, 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 really believe it. I think in a lot of cases they're just taking advantage of people, and it's manipulative. I guess it's a way of marketing. I guess that's the way they want to look at it. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it gets you. I guess it would get your brand in people's mouths sometimes. But you've been following the Bud Light thing.
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, it finally backfires on somebody, you know.
Yeah.
And now, of course, everybody's trying to turn. They're going after Target, and then there's this thing with Chick-fil-A, like, oh, you have an ESG person. You have a person that does ESG. Well, guess what? Every freaking company in the entire world has a person that does ESG. Sorry. Every company that we do, you know, every company does. And the reason, well, we're a public company, we have that too. That's just something you do. And the reason you do that is because you're freaking smart, and you have to do stuff like that. If you don't do that stuff, you're going to get burned.
What is ESG?
It's environmental, sustainability, and governance.
Oh, okay.
It's those three things. There's a push. There's definitely a push. It's kind of a left-wing push on ESG. It's gotten to the point where even within your public filings, there's stuff you have to say about it, about sustainability and all that stuff. It's, you know, and it goes from one extreme to another. We spend a lot of time, I mean, there are different facets to it. You know, there's equality and making sure that it's equality, sustainability, and governance.
Oh, okay.
And so we spend time on all three of those within our company. We do a report every what is it? Probably once a year. I think we do an annual report on it.
Yeah.
And it's all about, how much plastic are we using and how are we recycling the materials and how are we, with our energy usage in our buildings and a lot of other things that we try to improve. And we're always working on packaging and different things that, those are, I would say those are, at least on the sustainability side, those are the easy wins. Those are the things you can make an impact and you can show the impact, and it's all good. It's not, that's nothing wrong with that, but some companies take that to an extreme and they try to take a political stand on it. And I think that's where it goes crazy.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I've really honestly never understood why companies feel the need to take a political stance on anything.
You look at some companies like, if you're a tree hugger company like Patagonia, that works for you. You've got a certain brand of customer that's what they want. They want your company to do those things. Your customers become more loyal. Your brand is very specific to certain types of people, and that works. So I can see that. But then I see other brands like Nike, and I'm not exactly sure why they do what they do. Maybe that's just who they are, and they're good with that.
You ever heard the conspiracy that the World Economic Forum gives an initiative to the banks, and the banks will pull financing if they don't behave properly or use the same initiatives? You ever heard that?
I hear a lot of these things. I don't know what to believe anymore because everybody's got these, and it's like, I'll give you an example of this.
Yeah.
Which is a really good example because we just lived it, and that is COVID. So we just literally, as an entire world, this is the entire world, right? This includes everybody, just went through this experience where people start getting sick. Everybody starts speculating. They start speculating what it is. They start speculating where it comes from. Then all at once, the whole narrative is supposed to change. Now we're all supposed to believe something different. Then we're told, hey, don't wear these masks because they don't work. You have to wear the N54s, I think, or whatever they're called. Yeah. I think that's also a version of an exhaust system on a Buick. Right. But anyway, so you got to wear these masks. That's the only thing that'll work. So don't buy any masks. You remember that, right? Mm-hmm. That all came out. And then
absolutely, yeah.
Within a very short period of time, everybody was wearing like these crappy masks.
Yeah.
And that was supposed to save us. And then when anybody had a differing opinion, they were shouted down, and it was like, you're bad and you're evil and you have to do this. And it was this peer pressure push where everybody had to go for it. And then it was like people started saying, well, like how many people are getting sick? And it's like, keep your mouth shut. Don't worry about how many people are getting sick. You need to do whatever. Yeah. Well, what are the odds of this, or do little kids get sick, or, with the whole thing with schools. And then it would turn into this thing with, man, what are all the things? It was the vaccine comes out, and then
they had ventilators for a long time.
Yeah. And is it a vaccine?
Yeah.
From my understanding is when I take a vaccine, it actually prevents something.
Right.
This is not a vaccine. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but It seems to me like a vaccine prevents something. And if I take this vaccine, I still get it. Yeah. But they say, but you get it less. Okay. So I guess it's a vaccine. So, okay, whatever. So I did the shot, whatever. And, some of my family were like, we're not doing the shot, but I didn't even care because I'm like, one way or another, I'm going to die anyway.
Right.
And so, but then it's like, then people are asking questions like, well, how do you get sick, and who gets sick, and when do they get sick? And everybody gets shouted down that's asking questions, and they say, just believe the science. And then the craziest thing I heard through this whole process was that Fauci dude, when he said, I am the science. He said that. I was like, do you understand what the word science is? Like, do you understand what that, like, wow. Now I'm confused. But what it showed me was that within our world, kind of the way the world works, there's so much that goes around. Like everybody has a certain amount of brain power, a certain amount of processing power. It's limited. It really is. And because it's so limited, because we're all we're humans, groupthink doesn't really work very well. You just saw that with the entire world doing groupthink. It was a disaster, right?
100%.
So, and it's not like we don't progress. I mean, look at technology and look at all the cool things we've developed as humans. Like we've done a lot of great things, but in a disaster, or even when you start asking opinions about certain things, it seems like everything just kind of goes to hell really fast. And people they lose their rational thought. And one side that seems to be the ones that say they're the science side, all the ones that don't believe in science anymore, are the ones that say they're the moral side. They're not once moral anymore. And just like everything just turns upside down. And people build these little camps, but their little camps kind of fall apart, and it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, I'm just saying that I just think that when you look at that was a perfect example of how, groupthink doesn't work. When you hear about conspiracy theories like that, I don't know what's real and what's not real about those, because people come up with so many crazy ideas.
Yeah.
And it could be like super real. And these guys could be really doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
But at this point, I'm not buying anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was odd for me to see people comply so easily, especially with something they were taking in their own body. And I got the shot as well.
Yeah. I wouldn't wear it. I wouldn't wear the mask. I got so many people pissed off. I mean, I know that's bad because I'm supposed to be really compliant and nice, and because it was more of a courtesy thing, for a lot of people, they said, a lot of friends I had, they were like, well, you just need to be courteous to other people. And I was kind of like, yeah, I'll be courteous, but I'm just, this is so ridiculous. I just felt like it was so ridiculous because I kind of do this, and I won't say, I was interacting with a guy who's really famous, who was kind of the spokesman for the whole COVID thing at the very beginning. And he was kind of, I was sitting down with him and he's going, I said, is it mask? Does it help me? I asked him and he goes, no, it doesn't do anything for you. And I said, well, why should I wear a mask? He goes, well, he said, I think it gives people courage to kind of get out and do things, because otherwise they will just be crippled. They're not going to go out. They're going to be so scared. So it's probably a good thing that we have it. That was kind of his way of looking at it. But for me, it was like, man, I'd go to a store and it's like, look, I'm not around anybody. I'm not trying to scare anybody because if I don't wear my mask, I'll freak everybody out. Yeah. But like if I'm not around, like I was like, I'm not wearing this crazy thing. This is ridiculous, And sometimes people catch me and, it's virtual signal.
Let you have
how
it.
bad I am.
I'm still blown away by how many people still wear them. Like in the airports and stuff, it's crazy.
Yeah, I saw yesterday at Costco in Salt Lake. There were like some lady was standing next to me, and she looked really freaked out.
Really?
Yeah, she looked really scared.
With her mask on.
She was like, man, looking around like, who's going to breathe on me? There could be a chance that when I see that though, I make the assumption that she maybe have some real illness and she's really worried about getting COVID.
Yeah.
Which I shouldn't judge other people. So I just try to stay away, at least mentally. I saw that lady and I was kind of like, man, she looks really scared. And I was like, well, maybe she's got some illness or something. So I feel kind of bad for her,
I've asked, if anyone sits next to me in a plane and still has them on, I'll eventually during the flight ask them why, right? Because I can't help myself.
Yeah.
It's like a big red button.
Yeah.
And I go, hey, do you mind if I ask you a question? And they're always like, sure, whatever. I'm like, why are you still wearing a mask? And I'm telling you, almost every time it's just like, well, I just got used to it.
Wow, I don't know how you could get used to that.
All right. I
never got used to it.
No, I hated it.
I got first time I got on a plane, and I didn't fly a lot during COVID. So first time, let's just say the first time I took a commercial flight, I was flying to California. I was going to it was a Porsche thing. So it was a Porsche experience thing. So I fly down there, and because I had the mask on my face and I was stuck in this tube going, I don't know, 500 miles an hour through the air. And I just felt this. It's weird because I've flown I've flown, I think my base miles, I've probably got 1.5 million, 2 million base miles.
Yeah.
So it's not like I haven't been on a plane before, but I was feeling very claustrophobic. I was feeling very uncomfortable. I was pretending to eat the entire flight, and I kept getting told that I needed to have my mask on, but I was trying to put food in my mouth, so I would pretend like I was eating, and they thought I was just being. And there is some sense of rebellion there, but
yeah.
I was truly feeling claustrophobic because I had that thing on my face, and I felt like I couldn't breathe very well.
Yeah.
And then I flew. So we've been flying private, and that's been fine. But then I had to fly to Philippines, and I wore that mask. I was sleeping on the plane, and by the time I got home, I had pneumonia.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad, and I've never had pneumonia. Well, I wonder how that happened. Wearing a mask, trying to sleep for that long period of time. I'm assuming breathing my own air wasn't the best thing in the world. Maybe I got it from somebody on the plane. I have no idea, but it wasn't a good thing.
Well, weren't you in China the December before it hit here?
I was there. It was in January.
Was it January?
Yeah, I was there in January. It was probably just before Chinese New Year. And we were there with our employees. We had about 500 or 600 people there at this event.
Yeah.
And it was we have this dinner, and then they all do they do these skits and they sing. It is super uncomfortable for me because the food is Chinese and it's really Chinese. It's hard for me. And I can't understand anything they're saying. And I'm not really into this humor that's going on there. And anyway, so we're meeting with our employees, and they're introducing me. This is the group from Wuhan, and this is the group from here, and this is the group from here. But I remember when we were there, our employees were talking about the Wuhan flu that was coming around. Mm-hmm. They were like, there's this flu that's a Wuhan flu, and it's pretty bad. People are getting really sick from it. And we're kind of like, oh, okay. Because there's always something going on in China. So It wasn't a big deal. And we came to the U.S. I think Trump was calling it the China flu or something like that. But in China, they were calling it the Wuhan flu. That was their name for it. And that's what they said. They said it was coming from there. That was all very early on.
Yeah. Because did you feel like you got it?
I don't know.
Or exposed to it? Or
I don't know if I ever got. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I've had colds and stuff, so I'm sure. I don't know. Who cares?
I think I got it. So it was 2019 New Year's Eve, right? I had my cousin was over, kind of hanging out. Totally fine, totally normal, no big deal. The next morning I wake up, dude, I am super sick. My throat hurts like hell. Oh, that's weird, and must have had a rough night, blah, blah, blah. So we go for a couple more days. I think New Year's was on a Wednesday or something like that, or a Thursday. So then I ended up going to work the next Monday, but I was totally feeling fine by then. I wake up, I eat breakfast, no big deal, same thing. I go to eat lunch, can't taste it, at all. I'm like, this is odd. And then it kind of dawned on me, I was like, oh, I might have COVID, right? So I quietly left the office, no need to cause a panic. Went and got tested, and then I took the next day off, and then I got my test results in the afternoon or something like that. And I tested positive for having COVID. And I was like, oh, okay, so this is weird. And then I just waited for 5 days, which is what the CDC was recommending at the time, and went back to work the following Monday. That was it.
So if you think about the beginning of, so we're in China. A couple of the guys that were with me in China, they got pretty sick. They just got sick, and we couldn't. And they were like, maybe it's this flu that they were talking about in China, and I don't know if they had COVID or not. I don't know what the heck was going on, but we had this event, and I think it was I don't know, when did everything blow up? February or March, it seems like.
It was March.
Yeah, so it was late February. We've got, in our office, Ben McAdams. He's coming in. This is before, this time he's a local, he's one of our congressmen. Yeah. And he comes in and he just wants to get to know us. And so we meet with him, one-on-one. We meet with him, and then we have him talk to our employees, a bunch of our employees. And he goes, and for some reason, one of our employees we find out has COVID, and it's like the plague.
Right.
Like he's going to die because we find out he has COVID, and it's this big thing. And so we have an employee that's got COVID. We're freaking out. Then Ben McAdams, who had met this guy, he announces that he's got COVID, which I'm guessing he get one or the other, right? Something's going on here. Right. They shook hands. I don't know what happened.
A French kiss and
whatever it was. Yeah, that's probably a French thing. Yeah. And so we were so freaked out. We shut down that part of the building. We had cleaning people come in and clean his office, sanitize the office. We have manufacturing. So here in the U.S. in Salt Lake, we have, I don't know how many people in manufacturing, maybe let's say 300-400 people or something. I don't know what it is. Yeah. But we have all these people that we make vitamins and we make powders and stuff. And so I was super freaked out. I was like, I know that, first of all, I have no idea what this thing is. This is the plague, and everybody's going to die from this thing. And so this is the end of civilization as we know it. And so we have to figure out a way to survive this apocalypse. And so we'll have to keep manufacturing. We don't know we can't stop because that's going to shut our business down. But what we'll have to do is people are going to come to us. They're going to ask us, what are you doing to keep your products clean? Because we have really high standards of quality and all that. So we immediately, before anybody else, we just built all these protocols. Like I just said, man, everybody's got to wear masks. And I felt terrible because I'm like, these poor people have got to wear masks all day long at work. Yeah. But we got to do this. So everybody had to wear masks. We broke everything up into small groups. We did temperature checks as everybody came in the office. We recorded all that. We wouldn't let people in the building. We limited who could come into our main office. Yeah. Really, it was just mostly manufacturing people and a few of us. And then everybody else, we were like, just kind of stay home. We just literally just shut the world down and just got really paranoid because we had no idea what this thing was.
Right. That was going to cause problems. It was interesting. I remember when the PPP loans came out, my banker called me up and he goes, hey, you should get one of these. And I'm like, I don't need it, dude. I got plenty of cash. Like, we'll be fine. He goes, do you know what's going to happen in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? And I was like, no. He's like, get the loan. I was like, all right, fine. So we got it, which is great. It was nice. Some free money.
Yeah.
Thank you, citizens of the United States.
I didn't get any of that money, but I'm glad you guys all got money. That's great.
So we should talk though. So where are you currently working?
I work at USANA Health Sciences. So we're a public company. USNA is our ticker, New York Stock Exchange. So we're about we're about $1 billion in revenue. We were a little over that, but the last couple of years have been kind of tough for our business, not just us, but our competitors and all that too. It seems like it's been a little bit tough. So we make vitamins. That's our biggest product line. We sell all over the world. As an example, U.S. is 8% of, I think 8% or whatever, something smaller percent of our business. If you look at all, let's say North America, Europe and all that, I think that represents, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it might be 18% or something like that. Yeah. So the rest of it's mostly in China. We have probably 45% of our business is mainland China, and then we're in Taiwan, Hong Kong, so that's Greater China, and then we have Korea, Philippines, Malaysia, all that.
Are you guys in Vietnam?
Not in Vietnam.
Okay.
Our business, we're a direct sales company, and Vietnam, that's an illegal business in Vietnam, not allowed.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I just met a guy the other day that exports to Vietnam all the time, but not the direct model, I guess.
Exports to Vietnam.
To Vietnam.
Wow, I don't know what he's sending there.
It's a consumable sports drink.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
He has a buyer over there that he, business partner he works with. I'm actually meeting with the guy on the 20th.
Yeah.
I'm sure his name's Bob, but it's really like, whatever his local name is.
Yeah,
That's always my favorite thing when those guys pick like American names. I'm always like, what's your name? They're like, George. No, it's not.
That's like all the Chinese people I know, they all have American names,
Yeah.
It's like, okay, let's just go with your real name here.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Larry. Like, no, you're not. No one's Larry. Yeah, it's fun. So you've been in the direct to, what would you call that? Direct to consumer?
It's called direct sales.
Direct sales. You've been in that model for a long time, right?
For a while, yeah. The company before this was a company called Young Living, Essential Oils, and that company. So I'm a COO for USANA. Young Living basically had the same role. I was over operations, IT, and all that. So my official title was CIO, and I think I was executive VP over operations or something. But that's what I did. I ran kind of the back side of the company. The thing that kind of gives you all your products and and what feeds the customers, gets them their products and all that kind of stuff. And then before that, another company called Monavie. Mm-hmm. So Young Living we got up to about 1.2 billion. Monavie was not as big. Probably when I was there, probably 500-600 million, something like that.
Yeah. Is Monavie still around?
No, it's been through a bunch of iterations. It got acquired by a company called Jeunesse, and then Jeunesse just got acquired. Seems like just got acquired by somebody else, but it's like they shrink in size, and then they get acquired. And
because wasn't Monavie, if I remember right, weren't they the first ones to $1 billion in sales or something like that?
They were fast to $1 billion in sales. They weren't the first, but they did, and they did. I don't think they. The company, I wasn't there when they hit that number. Yeah. It was under $1 billion, but they almost hit $1 billion, but that was within like 3 years of doing business.
Yeah.
So hitting annualized, $1 billion in sales in 3 years, that's phenomenal. That's pretty spectacular.
For any business. For any business,
it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you? What path kind of led you into operations for these big companies?
Kind of weird. It was. My background is mostly technology. I started out I'm a mechanical engineer and all that. And we started a company here in Orem that was a 3D graphics company. So in the I'd say early 90s, we did 3D computer models. We built the 3D models, digitized. We call them digitizing or modeling. Yeah. And everybody thought that was like looking at a hologram, or that people had no idea what 3D was back then because that was very, very early stages. But we started doing accident reconstruction. We did cars right here. There was a company here, just down the street here, that was called Collision Safety, and we did cars for them for courtroom animation and built some characters and things. And the company, because of that, because we kind of knew how to digitize, nobody else really knew how to get a physical shape into a computer. Mm-hmm. You can get a triangle or or a square or something simple, but building a complex organic shape and using polygons to make that organic shape look good and to be able to render nicely, that's an art. That was an absolute art, and there was technology behind it, but really, we were just really, really good at we had really good, smart people. I would say really good artists. We hired really talented people, and we taught them how to use a computer. And so that turned into this really cool business where we did pretty much, I would say 90% of the visual graphics, the 3D, the visual effects that you saw in the 90s. Probably, I would say 90% or maybe more of that. The models that were used in that were all created by Viewpoint, by our company, and we kicked butt. I mean, it was cool. Like every movie was like, oh yeah, we did that. Yeah. Of course, somebody else would do all the animation and all the other stuff, but we built those 3D models for that stuff, and so I went off doing running companies, doing startups. First bunch of years after that, we sold the company and worked for CA, big software company, and hated that. And did a bunch of wanted to go back to, hey, I'm going to build this thing and blow it up again. I mean, I just want to do that again. It's so cool. And but I was working with a software company at one point. I was the president of this company, and one of our clients was a direct sales company called MonaV. And it was kind of I would say it was not a pleasant relationship between us and our client, MonaV. And in fact, there was an ownership MonaV had an ownership in the company, owned the company, but there were these contracts, and I was the one that was just making them mad, because I was constantly just saying, no, we're not going to give you your cash, or we're not going to do this, or we're going to do it our way. And they kept saying, look, we own you, we can do what we want. It's like, no, you actually have these agreements. And so I was just tormenting them all the time. And it was funny because as we did that, as we had these kind of, I would say, legal battles, because we had our attorneys there constantly, and then I'd go in and negotiate with them, and then our attorneys would have to deal with it, and it was like, and it got kind of ugly. And when we were all done, I got out of that whole gig, got out of that company. They said, we actually really like you. We like how you fight. We like you. I mean, I always kept my integrity through that whole process, and I liked them too. And so they said, why don't you come work with us and help us figure some things out? So I looked at their competitors and figured out kind of what they were doing, and at least gave them feedback, and worked on a scanner tool, this thing that, this really cool thing that scans it. You put your finger in this device that it was this engineering company helped us make. But it was a biophotonic scanner, and it would read the carotenoids in your skin, and it would show you over time, if you consume carotenoids, it would show you the increase of carotenoids, because it ends up in your skin, show you that. And so we built that whole thing with them, and then eventually one day they called and they said, hey, we really like you. Do you want to be our COO? I had no operations kind of experience. I had experience running companies, but I was really, really from the technology side. And so I get into this company, and I've got this kid who's this smart kid, and he's an MBA. He's getting his MBA at Harvard in lean manufacturing, and he's like my little Moneyball guy. Yeah. And he would sit in my office, and literally we had like all these walls I could write on, and he would just write all this stuff on the walls of lean manufacturing and how we could change things. And that's really, for me, that was a great experience, just jumping in and like in a real environment and figuring all this stuff out in operations. And so now I'm good at this. Now I know this is how you do it. This is how you really get this done, because, I've taken the lumps over time. Yeah.
Yeah. Lean manufacturing is funny. Cause I got certified by, a company down in Orem one time on lean manufacturing. They used to press fake diamonds. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh yeah. It wasn't Mega Diamond, was it? It was there was another one that was a competitor there.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Yeah.
They make the heads for the drills.
Yeah.
And
they were
US something?
Yeah. US Synthetic.
US Synthetic. Yeah, there you go.
And they were into lean.
Yeah,
I remember
big time.
That. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of their like community initiative to like teach classes to the community. And my friend Dan was their what was he over there? He was like their lean manufacturing specialist, but he had a more fancier name to it. And then ended up going to Hunter Douglas for a couple of years. And now he's over at Weir Pumps. If you ever heard of Weir?
Yeah. I've heard of them.
Yeah, Weir's funny because they're a massive company, but they're based in Scotland, right? So my friend would always end up going to Scotland like every other year, for like corporate meetings. He's like, what do I do here? And I'm like, visit castles. Like, you don't drink, so there's not much else to do.
Lean is a weird, I mean, you can take anything to the extreme. It's really applying something to a business. You can be really, it's like software development. You have agile development. It's the same kind of stuff, right? It's we do this, we use Agile in our development, we use Lean in our manufacturing operations, and they both have they're different, but it's this way of thinking. It's this way of doing stuff. It is kind of the way you want to look at it, think about it. And Lean started out being just in time, years and years and years ago. This dude named Deming went to Japan and kind of started that whole process. But it all goes back to basics. A lot of times it just goes back to basics, and you kind of just have to understand finance. You have to understand basics about cash flow. Yeah. And once you understand cash flow, then you understand what's the difference between a P&L versus a balance sheet, and how do you apply your cash in a way that benefits your P&L, but you need to make sure that your balance sheet is in check. Yeah. A lot of companies don't have good turnover with their cash, and they don't turn their cash fast enough, and you don't turn your cash fast enough, you don't make a lot of money.
Yeah. No, it's interesting you say that. We talk in my men's group, we talk a lot. So some of these guys, some guys are like wildly successful, and some guys are kind of newer in their career, right? Like we have got a guy that's like 23 in the group, and it's funny because I'm a little bit older in the group, which is hard to admit, 41 years old, right? So there's a few of us that, a lot of us have construction backgrounds / manufacturing / investment kind of backgrounds. And guys always ask us, it's like, well, how do you learn all this stuff? And it's just like, dude, you just got to go like find a mentor or like volunteer at the company you work at, Like if they ask you to do something, right? Like why? Well, for example, if you go to implement Lean inside your manufacturing plant, we'll pretend it's a smaller one, not like USANA, right? Because that'd be a massive initiative, right? It's like, hey, what we're going to do is make you guys more efficient. You're not going to move as much during the day. We're going to add a couple of machines in here for automation, and, we're going to make it so you can pump out, 3 times as many widgets in an hour as you do now. And I really wish people would ask themselves why. Like, why are they doing this? Because it's exactly what you said. Like, it's because you want to turn your cash over faster,
It goes back to basics, like I said. And that's where a lot of people don't realize it. Sometimes and that's what I was saying about these concepts. People will follow it because they're following the concept, not because they're trying to do something. Right. Like, hey, it's a rule because it's a rule. Therefore, we do it. That's why we wear masks, is because they tell us to wear masks, right? It's like, it's this mental thing where you go, well, I just do it because that's the best thing to do. Yeah. And then when you really break it down and say, okay, what are you really trying to accomplish? What is your goal? If you understand really what you're trying to accomplish, it makes a lot more sense. So in my opinion, I always kind of break it down to a couple of things. I always say, and there's no single right answer to this, by the way. You have to just kind of find out what you want to accomplish. Yeah. So for instance, if you're cash rich, you got a ton of cash, probably not your number one goal. Right. But most companies don't have that luxury. Most companies are cash poor. And so cash flow is king, which it is anyway. It's always king, but if you're low in cash, it's really critical, right? So
that light starts to flash instead of just
then you're screwed because then you don't have any options. Because it goes back. So I'll even take one step back. So the very first thing in a business is you want to have choice. You always want to have choices and options. You want to make sure that you can go and do whatever the crap you want to do as a business, because something changes and you can change because you have options, right? That's the number one thing you want to do in any company, any business. You want to have options. And so what gets you options? Well, cash. Cash gets you options. Yeah. So then you go to that next iteration, you go, okay, so we need cash. All right, so that might be one of the things you're working on. That means you're going to be working on inventories. You're going to be working on, and that's where Lean comes in. You can work on speed, efficiencies. You don't want to make sure that you don't do things over and over again, right? You got to do it right. There's these basic principles where you just say, look, if I just, even if I slow down, as long as I'm doing it right and I have less errors, I might actually be faster. Yeah. Like we had this fulfillment line at Young Living, and we were running 20 hours a day, and they told me, I think it was I think it was 12,000 packages a day was their max in that line. They were like, we can't do any faster. So I'm like, that's it. No, that's it. That's all we can do. So I'm this brand new guy, and I kind of stand there and I watch the line. I'm watching all this stuff going through, and they had like 2 boxes in this tote, basically 2 orders in a tote. And you got these employees that are frantically trying to fill these orders, and they're putting them in these totes, and they're trying to get, it's in their minds, they're thinking real estate, moving all this stuff through this line, through this conveyor. So they're trying to minimize the real estate of each order so they can get more orders through, which kind of makes sense. But then I was asking about like, how many errors do you guys get? And what do you do when you have an error? And I'm just asking a lot of questions, and we've got some consultants there helping, and we're all kind of trying to figure it out. And I'm just standing there one day, just watching this line going through. And I'm thinking, I think you're going too fast. And because you're going so fast, I think you're actually not going to get it done. It's going to be wrong.
Right. So
I want you to try something. I was like, I want you guys just put 1 order in a tote. Don't do 2. And they're like, well, I don't think that's going to work. Well, just do it. I just want you guys to do it. So we're going, about 3 or 4 days later, I go back in there, and I go to the line, and I'm watching, and I talk to this dude that's just there working the line, and he doesn't know who I am. So I go, hey, what do you think? What's going on here? How are things going? He's like, it's a mess. And I was like, well, what's going on? He's like, some a-hole got hired here, and he thinks that we should do just 1 order per tote, and it's just screwing everything up, And I was like, yeah, I could see that. I was like, that sucks, And he's like, yeah. He's like, these people don't know what they're doing, And he's just going off, and I just kind of laughed and walked off. And but what was interesting was our efficiencies went up. We actually got more orders out when we did that. So we just started learning. It's like you kind of have to just be a little bit opposite of the way you normally think. You just have to think a little differently you have to be willing to take risks. You have to learn from experience a little bit. And you'd have to kind of apply things based on kind of your environment. Everything's different. It's either going to be a cash flow thing. Maybe you want to drive profit, so you want to reduce your COGS. What is your end target? Which you want to do all these things, but what is your main, like if I pick my number one thing, what's my number one thing? Is it top line? Well, is it gross margin, right? Am I gonna reduce gross margin or increase gross margin? Am I going to increase my cash flow? Am I going to reduce my SG&A expenses by reducing my staff? And then it goes, so with all those things, then you go with speed, you go with efficiencies, you start talking about a lot of different things that are tied to lean. But again, if you pick your end goal and your target, you figure out exactly what you want to accomplish. You say, this is my first initiative, my most important initiative. This is my second most important. This is my third most important. Then every time somebody comes to you and says, I want to try something, then you can always go back and go, and this is what we do. We always say, okay, does this meet our first criteria? Because like at USANA, right now, I'm working on reducing my COGS, right? Because of COVID and everything else. So we've thrown some of this stuff out the window that everybody else would say that's important to do. I've thrown some of that out the window because it's like that's not really that critical right now. Like I don't care if I throw a little extra inventory in the supply chain. It doesn't matter because I've got the cash, so it's not that big of a deal. Right. You just have to apply things. You know what I mean? And that's based on experience. And you're right. Yeah. It's mentors, people that knowing their crap. Yeah. When you were young, what did you think of old guys that came in? You thought they were a bunch of bozos because they didn't think as fast as you did, and so therefore they weren't smart. And man, there's something about experience that's pretty freaking amazing.
Yeah, I'm one of the few guys that learned real early on that experience is like king.
It is.
It's probably when I started. So I took over as president of ADP when I was 27, and that's when I graduated high school or college. And I remember sitting there just thinking, it's like, man, I would much rather hire people with experience, especially like sales guys, right? Instead of like dudes off the street and have to train them and teach them the whole industry, where you can just go grab guys with experience and. Man, you're just off to the races with these guys.
I saw it early on where we hired some old guys, and I think they were a little bit past their, I wouldn't say past their prime. I would just say past their level of interest in working.
Yeah.
You know, they were kind of retired in a sense. Like we hired some guys that were really, really experienced people, but they're working with a bunch of young guys that are pretty dumb. I mean, we thought we were really smart. Actually, it was funny is if you look at our management team, like at Viewpoint, a lot of those guys have gone off and run big companies. I'm talking about really successful people. Oh. The whole group, I mean, it's really moved on and did really, really well. We had an amazing team. But we were all super young, you know? And so we thought we were it. We thought we knew everything. And so these old guys would come in and they'd kind of get washed out a little bit because, and I maybe that happens a lot still. I don't know. I haven't been around that much. You know, most of the companies I've been around, I'd say still a little recently on the older side. You know, I'm in my late 50s now, so I'm an old fart now in business, and so I'm now one of those guys, I guess. But the amazing thing is, I can sit in and watch situations now that, you know, years ago I would have had to iterate and figure out what the solution was, and now I watch it and I think, okay, I've played this out several times, and so I'm going to take the route that was most successful based on my experience, and typically that works pretty well.
Yeah. It's. Do you feel like kids nowadays? When I say kids, let's say you take your 20 and 30-year-old employees. Are they more interested in taking advice from you guys, or are they less?
I don't know. I would think they're interested in. I don't think they're disinterested in advice, and it depends on who you're talking to about too, because there are a lot of people that just don't even, it seems like they're not even participating in the workforce in the way that a lot of us did. I mean, we were, again, I'm not trying to act like an old fart, but I mean, when I started my first job, I was pretty desperate. You know, I had a kid, and we, you know, my wife was cutting hair, and I think we were making like, our high year was like 18,000. Right. You know, we were probably averaging much lower than that for the years before that. So you think, you know, and again, that was more money then, but was not a lot of money, and we were pretty poor. And so I was pretty desperate, and I was like, I got to go get a job. And I bought this printer. It was pretty cool. So we had printers that were, you know, that would put out, you know, they were okay. There were laser jet printers were coming out at the time, but there was still a lot of dot matrix and stuff. This is like 92. And I am like, dude, I got to get a job. And so I find this printer that literally is a typewriter. It's this huge thing. It's a typewriter, and it's a digital thing. So it can be tied to a computer. And so I thought, man, I could rewire this thing. I could hook it to my computer, this 8086 computer I've got that had the turbo button, which makes no sense, right? I don't know why I have a turbo button. So it should always be turbo, right? Yeah. So anyway, I plug that in, somehow get it hooked to my computer. I've got this whole backwards way of working through DOS, and I've got WordPerfect, and I would write these letters to these companies. I'd look it up, go to BYU or whatever I was, and I'd find these addresses of these HR people, which I was just so dumb. I had no idea how to find a job. I sent out 700 resumes on this really nice paper. I went out and bought this really nice paper, and I put it in this printer, and it looked like it was hand typed because like the letters, they just didn't match up perfectly next to each other. It looked like I just sat there and typed it, which it makes it look like I'm really interested in talking to these guys. 700 of those I sent out by mail, and got 200 rejection letters back, and was just begging for a job. And the company I ended up with, which was Viewpoint, I went in there and tried to get a job, tried to fake my way through an interview with this guy named JT, who now reports to me at USANA, but tried to get a job with him. He was like, no, we're not interested. as I'm leaving, they're asking me to, hey, maybe you can come back for, there's a sales position. The guy broke his leg this morning in an accident. Maybe you can take his job for a couple weeks, and well, let's see if you can talk to people on the phone. Basically, like just use my voice. Forget all my schooling that I just did. We're just going to be able to talk to people and just sell them a 3D model.
Right.
And I was like, at that point, I'm like, I don't care. I'll do it. $8 an hour, great. That's killer.
Yeah.
And, but I was trying, man. And then they let me go. And they said, oh, thanks for coming for 2 weeks. That was great. Man, I came back for like 2 months and just kept begging them to hire me. And I put so much effort in the beginning of and there are people that still do that, but I look at this generation, like these younger people, and there's so much expectation that people are going to take care of them, and they get their feelings hurt so quickly. They're so quickly say, you know what? I am not putting up with that. You're not going to speak to me that way. I'm leaving, and it could be a minor thing, but it's like, man, their trigger of moving from one thing to the next to make a decision change, a life change, is so quick compared to what I think other generations. I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying it's so different than with us. We were so like, man, I'm gonna do everything I can to make this work.
Yeah.
That's not the case these days.
Yeah, I was watching this TikTok the other day, and it was talking about how all these tech companies have kind of screwed the market for the last 8 to 10 years because they just keep on hiring away from people, right? Just putting all these salaries up. Then the last 6 months, these dudes are like on the street, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, we don't need you at $250,000 a year. You're just a programmer.
Yeah, you were overpaid.
Yeah.
You just didn't know it.
Yeah.
You thought you were doing great. And yeah, we've seen the same thing. We've tried to stay steady. We've got our IT team is about 250 people, and I just said, look, pay them well. Don't screw people. Make sure you pay them well, and make sure you pay decent. But if it's way over, then if it's unnecessary, unreasonable, don't hire that person, because they're just going to have unreasonable expectations. It's not fair to them, and it's not fair to us. And and let's just have a good environment. If we got to make sure that they have control. This is why we do Agile and Scrum and all that. But we just let them. We trust them. We hire really good people. We keep them. We try to stay out of the riffraff of hiring and firing the way that we see a lot of companies dealing with, and it's worked for us.
Yeah,
it's kind of the consistent thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also think it's bad for guys. Like I was talking to one of my friends who's like early 30s in my men's group, and I'm like, you need to go to a company and stay there for like 10 years in your 20s, like learn everything, But you should learn everything. That's one of the things that I had somebody that recently I was mentoring, and he's kind of stuck in one very specific job, and he's a really smart kid. I really like him. I mean, I think he's got huge potential. He can do anything he wants, and probably definitely more than he realizes. Like he doesn't realize his potential at all. And that was the feedback I gave him was, you've got to, I don't really care if you move around. You can. I said, I don't think that's a benefit to move around, but you can. It's not going to hurt you. But I think if you are able to learn, and what I told him is, you're a smart guy. I think you can become a CEO of a company. I think you've got that. And I really do think that not everybody can be a CEO, by the way. Right.
There are a lot of people that just don't have it. So
most
it's too
people
bad.
cannot.
Yeah, just deal with it.
Yeah.
And if you think you can be, then that's great. Bless your heart. But you can just tell there are certain people, and there are a lot of different things that make a great CEO, but sometimes it's your drive, or it's your intelligence, or it's your, everybody has their own talents, but you have to be a little more well-rounded. And that's kind of my feedback was, be well-rounded. Don't just stick in one discipline. You really, really do need to understand finance. No, I don't care what position you are in a company. Yeah. If the financial guys are talking and you don't understand what they're talking about, that's a problem, and typically they're saying something useful to you, and if you don't get it, there's a problem. So you should understand finance and marketing, sales, and then marketing. and IT. I would say those 4 things. There's a lot of other stuff to learn that are important. I think even legal, understanding contract law and understanding just how contracts put together, and be able to go through a contract negotiation with a really tough law firm and have a good law firm on your side, and then constantly be fighting through that contract. That's an education that everybody should have. Yeah. And once you've been through that and you understand, and your attorney is explaining why certain language in a provision is so critical and how it applies. Once you understand that, then you'll never forget that. And then from then on, for the rest of your life, every time something's thrown in front of you, I mean, I can do contracts. I have no problem reviewing contracts, changing contracts. I can do that. I'm not an attorney, but I can argue with attorneys, because I've had that experience and it helps me. And I just think everybody should have kind of a broad experience. And that's where, school's okay, but you got to take your lumps.
Yeah. Yeah. And you gotta be a quick learner too, right? And really it's it's being willing, I think people, it's funny when they get into, accounting to me, right? Like accounting is boring as hell.
Oh, it's awful.
It's the worst, right? Yeah. But the data that you drive from your accounting drives your entire business. So learn it.
Yeah. You have to understand a simple P&L. You have to, everybody in the entire company, I don't care where they are in the company, has to understand a P&L. Yeah. Because just basic understand, because then when you talk budgets or when you talk anything else, you can understand where that fits in that P&L. Yeah. And and I'm always trying to explain that to people. I'm always showing them, look, this is where this fits in the P&L, helping them understand what that means, because it's just creating the why. It's creating or at least it's putting things in context. I think that's what it does.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And it also kind of shows people, like, when you do certain things, how it affects down the line, because you get people who are like, yeah, man, this customer needed this product by Friday. And so I spent, 400 hours of overtime to make that happen. It's like, oops.
Yeah. Yeah. Or when somebody says, what the things I always hear is, we have all this extra money. We could spend it on, and then they'll come up with something to spend it on. And I'm just kind of thinking, do you understand finance at all? No. You literally don't you literally think that this is a cash business. Yeah. You don't even understand accrual. So you literally think that it's just this, or maybe not even that, you wouldn't even make sense, but you don't even understand profit matters. Yeah. You just don't understand it. You just dump things in and out. You somehow just kind of washes through this thing. Yeah. Doesn't make any sense. And then at the end, we're still employed, I guess.
And the owner's rich.
And the owner's rich. The owner's rich because look how much top line we got. So therefore, the owner's rich.
Oh, I've had that. So I just agreed in principle yesterday to buy half of a business, right? And he hasn't done his own accounting for a long time because he had another partner. I'm buying his partner out. That's how this is going to work, right? And holy shit, like going over their P&L, it's like, dude, what's this? It's like $80,000, right? Well, that's what they take for like a fee or something like this.
He doesn't even know.
He has no idea.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is really hard to negotiate with you to like purchase this thing. To be honest with you, it's more of a strategical play to own part of this business. I can tell you off camera a little bit more of the reason why, but like the business itself, it's kind of like, I hope I get this money back. But if this one thing happens because I own half this business, it'll make me more money than this entire investment. So that's what we're going to roll with here.
Yeah. That's a good way that's a good reason to do that. We do M&A. I do M&A. Yeah. That's one of my responsibilities. And so we're looking at, constantly looking at companies, and it's surprising how hard it is to spend money.
Right.
It's like, if I want to go out and buy a Ferrari, well, it's kind of hard to buy a Ferrari right now. Maybe I should come up with something different because they're kind of hard to get too. But let's just say I want to buy a used Ferrari. Yeah. I want to go out and buy a used Ferrari. I can go find it pretty quick. you want to go buy companies. It's not that easy. Yeah. And the only reason I say that is because some people are just drunk and just spending money. And I get that. And even in the tech world, there's a little bit of that. There's a lot of speculative buying and selling based on pretty extreme valuations, not really even on a return on capital. Yeah. It almost feels, and I offend people when I say this a lot, but it feels a little bit like I'm pawning it off to the next person. Like I invest in this business. It has ridiculous valuations. Now I go public. Now I'm pawning that money off to the next guy who's the shareholders that are out there, and it gets even more ridiculous valuations. And so they make money off that. And somehow, eventually, they sell their stock and they sell it to the next guy who gets more out of it. It's just like, I don't even understand what's going on here. Like, what are you guys doing this based on? Yeah. You know, is it based on something there, or is it just based on a concept? Yeah. And I know it isn't. I know it's more than that. But and there are those multiples come down, those metrics come down in reasonable times like this. But for me, when I look at acquisitions and companies, I think a little bit more like the Berkshire Hathaway model, you know, where you're generating a capital, and with that capital, you invest in businesses that generate capital, and then those businesses, and that snowballs to businesses where you generate capital. You generate cash over time, and you build a portfolio of cash. That's what I'm trying to do. At least that's what we're trying to do with companies. And so when we look at those returns, of course there's a tax benefit if you've got opportunities with tax, and then there's how you use your cash and your capital. Are you getting a better return than where you are with your current use of capital? And then you have to be I think you have to be very conservative about your long-term financial outlook of that business. You don't put a performer in place that is going to be wildly successful, because it's very dangerous, because there's a ceiling to a lot of things out there in the world. And even if you've got a good growth rate, you might be hitting that ceiling somewhere. And if you're betting on that, you could be in big trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. It's capital allocation. When you guys are looking at businesses, is capital allocation the number one mistake people make?
I think in most businesses, the biggest mistake that companies make is that they run short on cash. And when they run short on cash, they don't, I talked about options and choices. It's the highs and lows in life, you know? We all do it. You know, our whole lives have been, you know, they say, well, if you're not in a crisis, then you'll be in a crisis soon enough in your life. Or these people say crap like that, you know? Yeah. And that's the way it works in business too. Business isn't like all roses. I mean, those are the cases, the MBA school cases or whatever those are. That's where everybody talks about. Yeah. But in reality, every business goes through highs and lows. It's just the way it is. And it's not just because some small thing went wrong and we have to pay a little bit of money. It's like we had to pivot, and because like our business, like it was the jerk and everybody went cross-eyed because the glasses or something went wrong. And so we had to pivot. But because we thought this way, and because we had the cash, we decided to invest some of our cash and change directions here. Or we decided to keep our employees rather than just cutting our staff. Yeah. We keep our employees and change our sales force to be able to change directions a little bit, or to go after a different customer type. Or, you know, we did things where we had options and choices, and we didn't overthink. I think most people overthink it. You have to have some options and cash. And if you kind of look at successful companies and businesses, they're smart, but they just made simple decisions. Yeah. And took some risks.
Well, I see. So I have a spirits brand company, right? We do brand ambassadors for, you know, alcohol products. And it's funny. So we'll go to these smaller distilleries. They all have their own product, right? They're trying to push it out there in the world. They literally have no idea how to do it. And that's kind of where we really do operations for them. You know, we get them listed with the states or distribution channels and, you know, stuff that actually makes them money. And when you start diving into their P&Ls with them, they look over the year and it's like, okay, you guys allocated 47% of your cash to like advertising.
Yeah. It's a lot of times. I saw one yesterday that was just like that. It was a company that's going like crazy. That I just got a deck from an investment group, and their marketing expense, their DTC, they have a nice brand. It's growing fast. I mean, they're growing this year. They'll grow by 150% over last year, and they're well over $100 million. And great company. I mean, interesting. Let's just say interesting. I won't even say great company because there's a lot of risks in what I'm seeing just in the growth rate and everything. Yeah. But it's the exact same thing. 43% of their P&L is marketing, and so
are they getting return on investment though? Obviously,
their operating margins are decent right now. They're not great. I would say they're 8% or something like that. So their EBITDA is okay, but they haven't scaled. They're not at the scale level yet. Like what typically happens is they start going through this growth phase, and if you look at they still are going to spend 45% of their nut on marketing, which is acquiring customers. So they're constantly out there they're fishing, constantly fishing, throwing nets out, fishing constantly all day long, fishing, right? Instead of sitting in the boat, cutting up fish, they're just fishing like crazy. And then they're throwing the fish out the other side, right? and that's okay. It kind of works, but there are only so many fish out there sometimes. You know, certain places, there are only you got to go find another place, and you got to go keep finding other places. And so that whole business on spending that much of your percentage of your SG&A on marketing, I think has risks to it. We've seen it with some of the companies we've invested with, and I won't name them because they're some bigger local companies. But what they told us was, you know, initially, and we saw it. They were like almost break even or less, and they were just, and they, you know, big company, pretty big companies, but they were spending huge dollars on marketing, crazy dollars, like extreme. And again. When I talked to the founder, I talked to the founder the other day, and he's like, I don't know if I really made a mistake. I don't think it was a mistake to do that because he got his name out there. Right. Now he's going retail, so he's not spending as much on that. And of course, there's expense there too. It's not like that's not free. Yeah. You know, Amazon's not free. There's a big expense to sell through Amazon. There are a lot of channels that are expensive. Yeah. But this whole concept of DTC, lots and lots of marketing dollars, getting influencers and trying to get them to buy off on it, shipping expenses and all that. All those expenses, all that stuff, that becomes pretty complicated and it becomes a kind of a noose around your neck at a certain point, you know, because it's really hard to get, I mean, your COGS are what they are, and you can try to fake it and you can try to make cheaper products, but your customers kind of know what they want. You kind of can't really get out of that. You're kind of stuck with whatever you're selling, typically. And so that's kind of fixed. And so what's going to give? I mean, you can't, if that's your business is to do that marketing thing, it's tough.
What do you think a normal business should spend on marketing?
Every business is different. It depends on what you're doing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like some are just brands. You know, if you're building a brand, and I actually think, you know, the truth is that if you're building a brand, brands are worth a lot more than non-brands. If you're, you know, if I sell on Amazon and I don't have a really good brand, but I've got a good business, my multiple on EBITDA is not that high compared to the brand itself. If the brand itself is valuable to a larger company, that's worth it. And so maybe that's worth, if that's your thinking, you can do that. But if that's your business model, if that's the way you think that you're going to, like initially, okay, I'm going to spend a whole bunch of money on marketing, raise a bunch of money or whatever. I'm going to lose some money. I'm going to try to make this thing work. It works. But if that's your business model forever, if you think that's going to make you succeed, I just don't think that's a good strategy. I think maybe that changes anyway, just naturally, because natural selection teaches you that over time, you know? So maybe you just think that and you put it in place, and eventually you go, well, I guess we'll cut our marketing spend this week.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
funny, like, the companies I've seen, I just see them so bad with capital allocation, you know? So for example,
it's always the problem.
Instead of hiring a sales guy that's going around to like every bar in the state, right? And like meeting with the bartenders and like saying, hey, this is a new product that we have. Here's a cocktail that we've created that you guys can, and this is how you make money, right? That's another big thing. One thing that people don't understand in the spirits world, it's all brand. It's all marketing, right? Because whatever, that juice is the same. Vodka's vodka, right? Yeah. People like to pretend that it's not. It is. It's all the same.
Yeah.
So when you mix that stuff up, what the consumer wants is they want a special cocktail. They want to feel like they've gone out for the evening, you know what I mean? And they tried this new drink and it's amazing. They need to tell their friends about it later, right? That's the magic. If you can create an event or hold a moment, right? So like before like tailgating, before a University of Utah football game, if everybody had to have Vita tequila, right? Like I can't go into that stadium until I have a shot of Vita tequila, right? Like you've owned that moment. That's like touchdown for the marketing inside of a spirits world. And a lot of these guys, man, instead of just doing the stuff that really pushes them towards that, they'll just like donate a bunch of bottles to an event. You know, it's like, oh, this is a special event and my bottles will be sitting there. Well, people don't care.
Yeah.
Right. It's like if you go to a party, if they've got Coke, Pepsi, and RC Cola, like whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Coke's not going to look at that as a win just because they're in the room. You know? They're going to look at it as a win if people go, no, I drink Coke.
Marketing is that way though, for a lot of companies. And, you know, so you have to have, I've just learned, at least I've learned, because I'm very left-brained. My right brain doesn't really work. And so I recognize that if I just try to use, like if I work with an art marketing person and I just start talking ROI, they go into melting mode. Like they don't know how to deal with that because they don't know how to talk about it because they actually can't really tell you.
Right.
Most marketing people. There are places and there are events where you can get a direct ROI on a marketing spend, but a lot of times they love to use the word brand awareness because that's a really nice general word to say, I'm just going to burn money on this and I have no idea what's going to happen with it.
Yeah.
And I used to be offended by those words and I used to think you just can't do that. But you have to kind of respect different disciplines and different thinking. If you can't respect that, then you have no business being in business. You know, if you think that your way is the way, and so even with that kind of stuff, I always just kind of sit back and just think, okay, it's crazy. You know, this is crazy. You're spending this much money on, like you said, throwing out a bunch of product or, you know, doing stuff where you just go, really, you really think you're going to get money back? And I would say in many cases, it's a really dumb idea. It really is a dumb idea.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, lightning strikes and that guy becomes what everybody talks about. But then there are a lot of activities where you don't get an ROI, a direct, at least it's really hard to measure the ROI and yet they're still valuable. And I think that's always that's the balance you got to just figure out within each company. You've got to figure out that balance. You got to figure out how that spend is that a vibe thing? The customers get you that way and that's just who you are and you're making this cool thing and people love you for that reason and you're in that and therefore it helps build your brand. It helps people buy your products.
Yeah. And it's kind of fun, right? Because this is really what the C-suite does. Is they look at the financials, they look at the operations, and they look to find efficiencies and really make those decisions, right? I mean, I'm assuming most of your day is really spent figuring all this stuff out, right? Like,
yeah, we do. It's my day is weird. I spend. I'll give you yesterday, I guess. I don't know. It's all a big blur, but I'll spend time I'll sit with our executive VP over IT. We'll sit down for an hour or so, and he gives me an update on all the kind of the stuff that's going on. Like these are the things that are happening right now. Yeah. Two or three times in the day, I'll talk to the guys that are doing M&A, and like yesterday, was trying to get with some bankers, and I couldn't get in there because I had other meetings. And so finally, I said, "You guys just take it; it's fine." And then they called me on my way home. We talked about it, and it's kind of like, well, this is what they want. They want us to give them an offer by the 20th. And I said, okay, well then why don't you wait until the 21st or 22nd and then tell them we're not interested, just to piss them off. Like, it just bugs me when people do that. So I was like, look, we're the buyers. It's our money. They're acting like somehow they're special. We're the ones that are buying, and we should be in charge of this. And so we kind of joked about it and talked about how are we going to deal with that? And so that's part of it. It's kind of being creative. There's a lot of stuff where we look at data and metrics. Teams bring things in. I try to be not make think you get to a certain level in your career and you try not to make the decisions. You try to help people make decisions. And I'm not saying manipulate them. I'm just saying help them in the way they think and the way they approach things, and help them to become leaders and do great at their jobs. And so I spent a lot of time just trying to kind of get it out of them, talk through it. Or if I see things that don't make sense, pull them in after and go, okay, I just saw this. Like, what the crap? What is this?
Yeah.
What's going on here? And what do you think you're going to do about this? And how are you going to work through this? And so we spent a lot of time, at different levels, I guess. We spent a lot of time doing a lot of soft skill stuff, working with people. But then there's this part of it where a lot of data and metrics comes in. We do this constantly, where we're just looking at our numbers. And like yesterday, I was sitting in a meeting, and these people it was an IT meeting, and they're showing me charts and graphs and numbers. And I immediately I saw these two. They were showing how great this thing was that we just did, how well we did. And I'm like, no, this isn't good. Yeah. And everybody was like, whoa, look how great the numbers are. And I was like, guys, I wasn't born yesterday. I'm looking at your data. I'm looking at your numbers. Let me ask you a couple questions. And I was like, okay, the chart over here on the left, what does that represent? Well, what do you mean? What does it represent? I'm like, okay, let me get more specific. What countries in our systems does that chart represent over what period of time? Yeah. So they told me, and I was like, okay, this chart over here on the right, what countries and what time frame and what technologies you're using to gather the data for this one? So they answered the questions for both. And I was like, yep, your data's flawed. I knew it was. I knew your data was flawed. And they were like, well, we know it's better. And I'm like, no, you don't know it's better. You think it's better. And I was like, by the way, I would agree with you that it's better. I know it's better because this is our whole new checkout system. And so I know it's better. It's like 100 times better. But the data they're using is flawed. And I was like, you're just using flawed data. And so why are you even showing me this? Don't waste your time coming up with something that is trying to make me feel good or make yourselves feel good. Just get the right data. And they're like, so you're saying don't show me anything else until we know for sure what we're showing you. And I was like, yeah, just do that. And they were like, okay, that was fine. But I think, so there's a lot of, we're spent a lot of time looking at stuff and looking at data together and arguing numbers and strategies. We talk a lot about strategy as a management team, and individually we'll sit down and we'll argue things out. I think it's kind of cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Well, we are an hour and a half. Can you believe that?
All right, cool.
So I always ask my guests for their best 2 minutes of advice, but I want to ask you for a more specific thing.
Yeah.
I want you to give advice on, so say someone's 21 years old, maybe they're just 21 years old, doesn't matter if they're in college or not. What would you suggest? How would you advise them to find a career that they're going to enjoy?
I would advise them to stick things out and try some weird, hard things. Go get a job. Don't assume that you're going to know it right away, because you can't. I didn't know what I liked doing until probably about 5 or 6 years ago. So you got a ways to go. So you're 21, you got 30 years before you know what you want to do in your life.
Right.
I think that you just gotta try stuff. You gotta go and get a job, and some of them are gonna just suck. But you're gonna get a job and you're gonna try something, and you're gonna look around while you're doing that job, and you're gonna see what everybody else is doing in that place. You're gonna see some dude that drives in a cool car, and you see what he does for a living or she does for a living, and you say, I don't really like that. Like, I'm not sure I want to do that because that person seems miserable. They have money, but they're miserable. And then you're going to see other people that seem to succeed, and you're going to ask a lot of questions as you're doing that. But a lot of times what happens is people sit around and wait. They wait and they think, and they just have to come up with the perfect job. I didn't get that job. But if you look at my career, people ask me and they're like, oh my gosh, you had this amazing career, which I have. I've had these great jobs. But I also, I went through a lot of crap, a lot of turmoil. There were things that I walked away from that would have made me hundreds of millions at times that I walked away from, that others made that money. I didn't make that money.
Yeah.
And, but I just kind of stuck out what I did. And I'm not saying that's this path. It's just my path. But the best advice is try stuff, go through it, do it, ask a ton of questions. And then if it doesn't, not that you're just going to give up. I would say stick it out for a little while. Every single job you take, think through it a tiny bit, but then take the job and stick it out for 2 years and force yourself to stomach whatever you're doing, and then learn about everything that's around you. If you do that, you'll end up like you'll gravitationally just go to the job that will eventually make you happy at that point. You're not going to have that job from day one. You might be really lucky, but very few people I know have done that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a true journey, I think, in your career, to really find what you want and find what you're really good at. Right. I think there's a little bit of mix of both.
That's exactly right. I think that's why I'm saying it was in the last probably 5 years, maybe, because maybe before that, I'm probably more than that. I'm probably exaggerating, but it's, there's a certain point, like what I'm doing right now, the kind of jobs that I do now, I think, man, I'm really good at, like, I know how to do this really well. Part of it's just the experience and all that, but there's a little bit of my personality and there's other stuff. And I think, yeah, this is something where I like it's hand in glove. It just fits. It's not like the glove didn't fit this time. Yeah. It actually fit, and it feels good. And too bad it's kind of at the end of my career, but it feels good, and that journey that took me there was this amazing journey. It was this. I wouldn't take any of it. Some people have asked me, like, what would you do different? Nothing. Literally nothing. All the crap that I dealt with, all the people that I didn't like working with, all the other crap that I had to do, even the times where I was worried that I was gonna succeed or things went really, really bad and I failed really badly, or I really embarrassed myself, or whatever I did, those were all what I was supposed to do. And so there's nothing wrong with trying stuff, going in there, doing it, failing at it, learning from it, going to the next thing, moving on. I think that, you think about trying to get the perfect job, that's a lack of desire to fail. If that's the way you think, you have to jump in and be willing to fail, because that's how you get that perfect job.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, Walter, thank you for coming on the podcast. This has been fun.
Yeah.
So we could probably go on for a couple more hours.
Yeah, it's fun.
Anyways, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the President McCormack Podcast, brought to you by McCormack Foundation, Saxton Fund, ADP Lemco, and Professional Floor Systems. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and keep up with Mark on Instagram @President McCormack.